Ever since Vladimir Putin turned his years-long campaign of aggression into a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, one question has loomed large: who's next? Even as Russian forces continue to take devastating losses in Ukraine, Putin and his allies have hurled threats at almost everyone they see as a part of the West's effort to contain Russia. The Baltic states, Poland, Sweden, all have been threatened before. But now, Putin's regime seems to be pointing the finger at another target: Finland. That impression comes straight from a September 8th article by Dmitry Medvedev, Putin's loyal ally and deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council. Medvedev, who once served as Russia's placeholder president while Putin played at respecting term limits, now spends his time saying the things Putin once said, without Putin having to say them himself. And in his latest piece published by TASS, Medvedev issued a chilling warning to Finland. He claimed that any confrontation with Russia could lead to the collapse of Finnish statehood, once and for all. At first glance, this isn't unusual. Russia constantly threatens others, insisting they'd be destroyed in a war. What matters is how Medvedev justifies those threats. He accuses Finland of being obsessed with revanchism, of wanting to undo the outcome of the Soviet-Finnish War of 1939-1940, and reminds readers that Finland fought alongside Nazi Germany in the early 1940s. The implication is obvious: Finland is still a Nazi collaborator at heart. Of course, the history is more complicated. Medvedev conveniently ignores how the Soviet Union invaded Finland in 1939, forcing the country into a war it never wanted. Finland lost territory in the Treaty of Moscow and later allied with Nazi Germany mainly to reclaim what it had lost. Medvedev leaves out all that context, twisting the facts to paint Finland as the aggressor. It's a familiar tactic. Russia bends history until it can be used as a weapon. The parallels with Ukraine are hard to miss. Before invading, Russia accused Ukraine of Nazism, even though the evidence was almost non-existent. In 2019, only about 2% of Ukrainians voted for far-right parties, and President Volodymyr Zelensky himself is Jewish, with family members who perished in the Holocaust. But that didn't stop Putin from repeating the lie over and over, that Ukraine had turned into a Nazi state and Russia had no choice but to act. Now Medvedev is applying the same playbook to Finland. He claims Finland is Russophobic, that it persecutes ethnic Russians, that it's turning its back on beneficial ties with Moscow. He portrays Finland as a Western puppet bent on harming Russia. It's the exact same narrative Russia used against Ukraine. And when Medvedev uses the phrase root causes, it becomes crystal clear. Putin often talks about those so-called root causes, Ukraine's supposed Nazism or NATO expansion, as reasons why he cannot make peace. Medvedev is signaling that Finland too has root causes that must be solved. And NATO is the real issue here. For decades, Finland stayed neutral, balancing ties between East and West. But after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Finland made the historic decision to join NATO in April 2023. That brought the alliance directly onto Russia's border, something Putin has long railed against. In fact, NATO expansion is widely seen by analysts as one of the key reasons Putin launched his war on Ukraine in the first place. Now with Finland in NATO, Russia has a new enemy to focus on. Medvedev even acknowledges this, lamenting that Finland abandoned a mutually beneficial relationship with Russia, yet in the same breath he calls Finland a Nazi state preparing military infrastructure for aggression against Moscow. He ends his piece with a sinister warning. Finland should remember that unlike in 1944, nobody will spare them next time. He even mocks the Finnish cultural icon, the Moomins, saying no bedtime stories will save them. It's all designed to tell Russians that Finland is asking for a fight. Does that mean war is imminent? Probably not. Russia's military is still bogged down in Ukraine, bleeding manpower and equipment for minimal territorial gains. Opening another front now would be reckless. But the rhetoric shows that Russia is preparing the informational groundwork, just as it did before invading Ukraine. The Institute for the Study of War notes that Medvedev's threat is part of a broader Kremlin strategy to normalize the idea of conflict with NATO. Similar claims have been made about the Baltic states as well. The goal is clear: make Russians believe NATO countries are Nazi aggressors, so that war feels justified if it comes. So could Finland defend itself? On paper, the numbers look grim. According to Global Firepower, Russia ranks as the world's second strongest military, while Finland is 48th. Russia has over 1.3 million active personnel compared to Finland's 24,000, plus 2 million reserves versus Finland's 20,000. Russia also vastly outnumbers Finland in tanks, aircraft, artillery, and spending. Purely in military hardware, Russia would overwhelm Finland. But numbers aren't everything. The Finnish people are uniquely prepared for hardship and conflict. Their national concept of sisu, roughly translated as grit or resilience, shapes their mentality. As one Finnish civil defense planner told The Times, "We believe sisu is our superpower. We live in a hostile climate. We are next to Russia. You need guts." Over 80% of Finns support conscription, which ensures that a huge portion of the population has military training and can be called into reserves. Finland has been through this before, and its people are not easily rattled. And Finland is taking concrete steps to prepare. In 2025, it has been fortifying its 830-mile border with Russia, building a 124-mile fence to counter the influx of undocumented migrants that Russia has been pushing across the border as part of its hybrid warfare. Finland closed border checkpoints in 2023, reopened a couple, then shut them again in 2025 after continued pressure. It is also constructing vast underground fortifications that combine living quarters with military facilities, learning from Ukraine's experience of drone and artillery warfare. Finland doesn't need Medvedev's threats to know Russia is dangerous. It already acts as though an invasion is possible. Even with these preparations, Finland cannot fight Russia alone for long. But the key difference between Finland and Ukraine is NATO. Under Article 5 of the NATO Charter, an attack on Finland would trigger a collective response from all NATO members. That deterrent may be the single strongest factor preventing Russia from turning its propaganda into actual war. Finland has wasted no time integrating into NATO, hosting exercises and allowing a regional land forces command center to be established in Mikkeli, near the Russian border. For Putin, this is the nightmare scenario. NATO closer than ever, stronger than ever, with countries he once counted on to remain neutral, now fully aligned against him. Medvedev's threats show just how much this frustrates the Kremlin. By painting Finland as Nazi, Russophobic, and aggressive, Russia is trying to set the stage for escalation, even if it isn't ready yet to act. Still, the possibility remains. The same words and lies that paved the way for war in Ukraine are now being directed at Finland. Russia's propaganda machine is turning Finland into a scapegoat for its grievances with the West, just as it once did with Ukraine. And while Finland is preparing itself with sisu, fortifications, and NATO membership, the danger is real. Putin may not strike today, but the groundwork for tomorrow is already being laid. And as Finland steels itself, another NATO member has already been tested. Earlier this September, Russia launched a massive drone incursion into Poland, an unmistakable attack on a NATO state. What happened next could define the alliance's future. Stay tuned to the military show for our next video, where we break down how Poland responded and what it means for Europe's readiness if Putin decides to expand his war.